Шановні колеги, продовжуємо нашу роботу. Наразі про реформу ЄСВ з другої спроби, який вона матиме вплив на бізнес і чи вийдуть зарплати з тіні, нам сьогодні розкаже Андрій Зhuriy, народний депутат, який...
So, we have now Ilya Neskhodovsky, the expert of Reanimation reform package, and Andriy Zhuriy, the MP of Ukraine from Samopomich. As you know, the coalition agreement envisaged the reduction of the single social tax, and that would allow the state not to lose money, but on the other hand, to create conditions for business which wants to get legalized, to give a chance to business to pay these taxes legally. Business is ready to pay all taxes in the country. The state has just to react to that and create conditions that would allow everyone in the country to work officially and to resolve the problems of pension fund by getting additional revenues to the budget, to the pension fund. The shadow economy is what can fill in the pension fund and the state budget in general. As you know, before the new year, we insisted that the Verkhovna Rada voted for the changes into the single social tax in part of applying the coefficient, because we had nothing to do with the other parts of the law, but we were working on this opportunity to use the lower coefficient. During the discussion, when we were trying to come to an agreement that this mechanism should be passed in December last year, certain criteria were added which made it too heavy, and next day we knew, when we had certain consultations with business, that many will not be able to enjoy it. And the working group was set up, which by the end of December last year, together with the people from State Fiscal Service, together with the auditing companies, RPR, developed the changes to this draft. Draft 1863 was registered in January, and this week we passed it as the basis. And in total, what has changed? We removed all extra criteria. We removed criteria which were difficult, 700 hryvnias per one insured person, 3 minimum wages, and replaced it by one simple criteria, that the payment for one insured person in 2015 should be not less than in 2014. I will explain. If, for example, you were paying 1,000 to a person officially and 1.5 unofficially, out of 100 hryvnia you were paying at the rate of 37%, 370 hryvnias. So when you legalize 1,500 hryvnias, which were unofficial, you will be paying to the budget the same 370 hryvnias, because in this case, the coefficient 0.4 will be calculated, this rate will be 0.8%, and the payment to the budget for you will be the same. Yes, the state will get additional revenues because from legalized sum you will pay additional 15% of the physical person income tax, 3.6 of single tax per person, and 1.5 of military fee, but instead of 58 total percent, it will be 34%, so minus 20 to 23%. I can tell you that immediately after we voted in the beginning of January, there were many requests to the fiscal service that business wants to apply it in many business, but there were many complaints that not all of them can, that there are certain specific features and they were not taken into account. They could not understand where to get the indicators from. 1863 also removes all these contradictions. It clearly sets where which indicator is taken, how it's calculated. It's clear that all the indicators are taken from the declaration or report of the employee for 2014. All this information is in the report of the taxpayer. Also, it is also important that even though we as members of parliament were trying to reduce it much more, this requirement as to 30% of increase of salary to apply the coefficient, but we did not manage to remove it, we managed to weaken it. Now the requirement as to increasing the base is reduced to 20%, taking into account the inflation processes in the state. I believe that many subjects, even those who were paying all the salary officially, but today are trying to compensate that to their workers to compensate the losses to their workers. They will be able to use this coefficient, and this way they will be able to pay people more salary. I would like to say that the critics who say that the salaries were increased when the coefficient is applied, the state will have losses. There will be no losses. The increase of the pension fund has about 5% for this year, and 140 billion were paid when 7 billion were to be paid additionally. From the beginning, the pension fund giving the comments to our draft were saying that if all the pay is applied, then the payments will be at the level of 2014 and possible losses are 7 billion. And then discussing it with the pension fund, we were proving that yes, even if the single tax is fixed at the same level, 15% to 3.61 and a half, that is 4 times more. Even if all apply it, the budget will get additional billions of hryvnias. This draft is very important to move forward the process of legalizing salaries in Ukraine. Any government would have resolved that issue if the new answer to a simple question: how much money of salaries are in shadow economy and how soon they will be legalized? Because we know that gradual reduction gives no effect. There should be the cardinal reduction at least twice so that business reacts to this proposal. Unfortunately, the state we have to give an answer. What will happen when there is a certain period of time when business calculates whether to legalize or not, and the rate is lower, and the business could have problems with executing the social obligation. So this technical mechanism in 2015 is very important, so that on the one hand not to allow taxes and to fulfill all the social duties as a state, and also create preconditions for legalization. I believe that we've made a very big step forward. And we will initiate the draft in the nearest future from 2016. We shouldn't even consider the coefficient of 0.6, because now it's a compromise with the Ministry of Finance that they will do that. But we have to go the way of Georgia and Slovakia, and that is cancelling a single social tax and introducing single personal income tax. And in 2016 it should be at the level of 28-29%, in 17 25%, and in 18 20%. This way, so that we do not have different rates, so that administering is simplified. We have to recognize that the single social tax does not execute the function that it had to execute, talking about the revenues, that the first line of the budget, and the third line is the personal income, physical entities tax, and 60% it's creating jobs. Well, basically it does not help creating any jobs, and the state has to concentrate on that. We as MPs, as experts, will be moving them towards that, and will be doing what the public calls upon. They say that our draft is good, but it would be better to make more cardinal steps. But we say that 2015 is the transition of the cardinal steps will be made in 2016, and they will become possible because of 2015, because of this coefficient. Thank you.
Ilya, прошу.
Good afternoon. First of all, I would like to say thank you, Andriy, for people going to the parliament, for those people who are in the parliament, who are not the populists, who are from business, and based on specific steps, they want to do it so that in this country, it's better to conduct business activity. For a long time, there was a proposal as to reducing the single social tax. What was the problem of just reducing this tax? First of all, because of the tax, the pension fund is filled in. If we reduce the single social tax, this means that the pension fund has to get money somewhere to pay pensions. The expectation that everyone will increase salaries is wrong. Why? Because if I pay, for example, 1,000 hryvnias, and they tell me pay 500 hryvnias, why should I pay 1,000 hryvnias? Why should I pay 1,000 if I can pay 500? Also, that means that reduction of this tax will mean less pensions, and it's not clear what will be the sources to fill in the pension fund. The second thing, reduction of single social tax will mean the privilege for those who did not pay officially salaries. Those who paid salaries officially, they will be selling less, but those who were paying unofficially will also be paying less to the single social tax and to pension fund, and that is also not fair. That is why what was suggested is a very good compromise between how to reduce the single social tax and not to reduce the revenues to the pension fund, because the financial situation in the country is very complicated. For example, if you increase the salary fund by 20%, you will be paying 8.5% less of the SST. It will be reduced from 38 to 28.5%. If you increase more, then you will have less. The percentage will go down all the time. That is real reduction. And if you use the full-fledged, if you increase the salaries fund 2.5 times and you use the ratio of 0.4, then the burden on salary will correspond to the European. We'll move to having the burden on salaries like in Europe, because if you compare that in Europe the burden is lower, we have larger, now we're moving to European standards. What we suggest on, we consider to cancel SST and to increase the physical entity personal tax. 0.6 will not be higher. In 2016, that is what we are starting from. If in 2015 we show better situation and the revenues to the pension fund grow, then 0.6 will be less. Maybe will be 0.5, 0.4, but it will not be higher. We will not allow the state to review something and worsen the business environment. RPR will be making all possible steps not to allow that to happen. Also, there is possibly another option, reducing of SST divided between the worker and the employer. Now it's 37 and 3.6%. It's clear that the person doesn't feel that they pay salary taxes. They feel that what they get. And in the result, that is one of preconditions of shadow salaries, because as an employee, I'm interested what I need so that my employer executes the function, or as a worker, I am interested in what I get, and this difference, well, what are you interested, how much you get, because there's some social fund, he's not interested in that. He's interested in how, and I'm interested in how much I spent. And that is the step. If a person pays himself or herself, they will feel that this money goes to the budget. They pay, they finance. That's another step which is to be implemented in the process of developing approaches. We believe that our approaches are quite new, creative, and what we suggested wasn't used in the world. There was a reduction, increase of the pressure. That's a very friendly step. Not to go to companies and those who are not registered, let's find them and punish. No, we're not suggesting that. We suggest to go. You have a chance, go out of shadow, start showing your real salary. That is also our approach. And one more thing that I would like to mention, those who cannot use this coefficient, starting from 2016, you will be paying only 24.8%. That means the significant reduction. That is also
Я ще раз, який дозволить, в принципі, перейти
a significant step which will allow to go to European level of taxing salaries. I would like to thank the whole team because the negotiations were very simple. In December, they were passed with approved with some reservations because 3 minimum salaries, if you can consider it for Kyiv as a normal, but for regions, the salary of 3,654 hryvnias is a big salary. For them, it's something unrealistic. That was the criticism we were receiving. If we take 700 hryvnias, then the salary should be 4,200 hryvnias. All these reservations were removed, and now we get feedback from many companies who are moving to the reduced rate. They legalize their salaries because for them it's profitable. And to all who are skeptical, let's look at statistical information. Let's look at the statistical data in the end of the year, and we'll see whether it worked or not. There are people watching us online, and they are sending the questions to me. And the questions are, you know, that the situation with the regulations, with documents which are to specify the procedure of paying SST, there were some problems with that. The entrepreneurs were paying at a node rate. What's happening with regulations now? Maybe that's the question not to you, because you participated in negotiations. And secondly, the law is not doesn't have a reverse action. If this law is signed, will it cover those who were paying from the 1st of January SST at a new rate? These overpayments were made when the banks were requiring a certificate from the tax inspection. At the beginning of March, the National Bank sent a letter to the bank that this certificate is not needed, and those who already paid after that letter, they were paying and there was no overpayment. Methodologically, the law is regulating these issues much better. Talking about bylaws, they are being approved at different ministries and agencies, and by the end of March they will be approved and published. And the second question, that was the second question, right? And in this case, I believe that the law will become effective from the moment of publishing, and those who will submit reporting, they will be using this new method. But for January and February, they will have to do it according to the previous law. And you're talking about further radical steps as to reforming the tax system. And I understand that the Ministry of Economic Development will be responsible for that. Will it help the process? As far as I understand, the Natalia Yereska, Ministry of Finances, are responsible for tax reforms. I believe this should help, but on condition if the Deputy Ministers of Finance who were working before her are removed from this process, because otherwise we will see the tax reforms that we had to vote for before the new year. I would like to add, we had after Maidan working groups set up at the Ministry of Finance and the Ministry of Economy, and these groups were working on amendments which are to be implemented to start the economy. But in fact, all the recommendations were ignored. We mentioned that that was a wrong practice. The changes that took place without discussions with business and experts demonstrated that they just worsened the conditions for business, and instead of getting more money to the budget, you get less. We are getting ready the proposal of the Ministry of Finance to renew the work of such groups where business experts will be included, the representatives of Ministry of Finance, and together they will be developing recommendations as to improving the tax system so that it starts operating, so that the entrepreneurs can say that is what helps us grow. That is our proposal. I also would like to add that this 1863 draft is very important for tax reform, because without legalizing salaries, the tax reform is impossible, irrespective of whatever the GDP rate is. If you have 60% for salary, everything else doesn't have sense. That is what we have to start with. And after that, all other steps could become effective. Thank you. I hope that the changes you are talking about, these are the changes of philosophy. I hope that soon we'll get to the situation when the person himself, herself will be paying all these taxes, because that will change the attitude of people to the state, and they will be looking at what the taxes are spent for. And I personally want these changes to be introduced by the end of the year, so that the drafts are submitted to the Parliament and supported. Thank you.